the happier you are now, and they determine happiness by basically how well you feel about yourself and how hopeful you are for the future. So the more hope you have for the future and happiness you have in the present, the more likely you are to get that goal.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why? Hi everyone, I'm Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Chris Schwagerl. Chris blends 19 years of mental health with a decade of entrepreneurship. He helps syndicators make more money and live the lifestyle of their dreams using performance psychology. Chris, let me just start by saying thank you so much for coming on the show today, taking the time out. Here we are on a Friday afternoon, so I very much appreciate you being here and taking that time. Thank you.
Hey, you're welcome. And it's an honor to be here talking with you and your audience. I will say that it's one of the first sunny Friday afternoons, so it's a huge sacrifice, but I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
There you go. Chris, let's just start by telling us your background, your story, kind of how you got to what you're doing today. Just give a little bit of that so we can kind of get to know you better.
Yeah, right on. Well, performance psychology, people are always like, what is that? And it's a marriage of the two things that I love, which is really helping people through mental health and mental systems and entrepreneurship. And when I was in high school, I remember sitting there while the assistant principal would call the naughty kids to the office every day, and it was the same kids. And I was thinking, like, why is it those same kids? And that got me really interested in psychology. And so I went into college. I got a degree in psychology. I got another one in child psychology, and then I got a master's in social work. And I started working in the field because I wanted to give back. And blindly, I thought that was the only way that I could give back to the community. And so I worked with kids in juvenile justice. I worked with people who were perpetrators and victims of domestic abuse, people who were in a mental health crisis residence, people who didn't have houses, typical therapy, typical case manager, all that kind of stuff. And then I found myself 32 years old, living in my friend's basement den, not even a bedroom, a den, Jason. And I was paying him $200 a month to live there because I was getting paid $16 an hour, plus had another job bartending. And one of my friend's wives finally, thankfully, Michelle, thank you for kicking me in the butt and saying, I am so sick of you complaining about money. Why don't you go out there and do something about it? And I didn't think I could. To be honest, I thought you're put on this earth. You get what you get. You don't throw a fit. I just kind of like picked my lot in life, and I picked a career that wasn't going to pay me anything. And I was passive aggressively complaining about it often. And so I asked her, Michelle, what do I do? She said, I don't know, but my friend gave me Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Read that. So, of course, the rest is history, right? Because I saved my money. I got a duplex. I bought another duplex, got into it, trained other people who were in mental health on how to create passive income. And that's when I got into syndication, raising capital from other private investors to do bigger deals. People are saying, hey, I know that you've got a raise and you're making 17 an hour, but how have you put together this portfolio? Like, let me in. And so I joined a mastermind group. And in that mastermind group, I was nervous because I'm coming from a mental health background. Everyone else is coming from finance or engineers or doctors, like real high income earning W-2s. And I'm making like 17, $18 an hour. I'm showing up in a suit that I just bought at Goodwill, By the way, I still buy my suits from Goodwill. But now maybe I just buy the best suit at Goodwill. But anyways, so getting into syndication, I realized that I'm leading calls, I'm leading conversations about the mental health of it, because everyone says it's 90% mindset, 10% execution. And then here's 2 or 3 days on the execution. And so I find myself I found myself working with people on a pro bono basis. And then someone said, of course, people would pay money for this. And I said, oh, you don't say. And so now I get to marry both of the things that I love, which is mental health and mental support, and also entrepreneurship. And I get to put that together and create a business that helps people. Because if there's more people getting passive income out there, families are getting helped. And so I don't see this at
Yeah.
all as like some sort of roundabout way. I see this full on. I'm 100% full on conviction that this is helping families and helping kids.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that you truly can change lives with offering people the ability to passively invest. And one thing that in your story there that I think is important to point out, and you sort of alluded to it making you feel nervous about joining this mastermind, that you were maybe not the highest income earner in that mastermind, but what I get out of that is you don't have to be the highest income earner to change your life through real estate. You don't have to be already wealthy to do, what you want to do with your life and finances. And I think so many people are waiting to reach some, mythical threshold of income or savings or whatever it is. And then they're going to start investing. And instead
Mm-hmm.
they're just wasting time. And during that time, you know whatever, inflation's happening, they're not making, they're not creating a passive income stream. And so I just like, you say that, but you actually took action, and I guess thank you to Michelle for inspiring that. But it's definitely, I think, an important thing to point out. And I think the other thing is just that you join a mastermind, so it's getting around people that are also doing what you want to do. And so a couple of important action steps when when you had that sort of revelation of how to help, there, if you go on social media and whatever, the web, YouTube, all that stuff, there's all kinds of things about how you have to have the mindset around, achieving big things. And what does that mean to you at a basic level? Like when you say you're going to work on performance psychology, like how does that process start? How do you give people, a basic foundation? What are you looking for to make that happen?
Yeah, with mindset, I really think it means authenticity. I think it means vulnerability, and that's probably not an answer you were expecting. I think a lot of people get mindset as I'm positive 100% of the time.
Yeah.
I am go, 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 rah, rah, rah. I cold plunge 5 times a day type of thing, and it becomes another to-do list, like what's my mindset to-do list, like, and that doesn't really make sense to me. I think mindset is a lot more about subtracting than it is adding. We've been living our lives with ourselves with 30,000 thoughts every single day. 95% of those thoughts are recurring. And so we have a narrative in our brain about who we are, and we believe it absolutely. It's like our thoughts are the movie theater of our lives, right? But there's just some kid putting on a different film and playing it over and over and over, and we're the only person in the audience with popcorn taking it all in, taking it in as truth. And so what I think of as mindset is, am I being me? Am I being the best version of me that I can possibly be? And am I okay with that? I think it's having a North Star, having a moral compass, knowing where you're going in life, having a why, imagine that, and figuring out how you can get there and separate your priorities and getting there from the noise. And that takes a lot of guts to do that. So that's what I think of mindset is being you amplified.
I like that. I think I have experienced the, sort of trying to I don't know, manifest, positivity, think success, like all of that
Mhm.
stuff. And then but then I almost feel like at that point you don't know what to do when things aren't perfect and going, though it's like your body's like, well, I have to just keep, but you can't just, I think you can't do that and just ignore the other, struggles that you might be having. I also think sometimes you, you get, if you get in this point of, I can just power through everything, and I'm gonna use positivity and all of that to get through, it ignores a fairly important piece of the puzzle, which is the business plan and actually doing things correctly to accomplish, like if we're talking syndication, fine, or any business or anything like that, you also have to have some level of um, knowledge, experience, systems, processes, plan. All of that has to go into it as well. So I guess, how do you reconcile all of that? How do you kind of be that authentic, version of yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to tackle this in three different parts here, if that's okay.
Sure.
First, we mentioned some of this earlier, and I want to get back to it, which is the concept of, hey, when I reach that goal, then I'll be happy. When I get that first deal done, which is what a lot of my clients say, when I get that first deal done, then I'll feel better. Then I'll have credibility. Positive psychology, which is an arm of psychology that got popular in the 90s, has a ton of evidence that says that that's not true. It's actually the opposite way. The happier you are now, and they determine happiness by basically how well you feel about yourself and how hopeful you are for the future. So the more hope you have for the future and happiness you have in the present, the more likely you are to get that goal. So it's really kind of ironic in that way, where if you focus on your present and making yourself feel great about yourself, you're more likely to achieve your goals. It's counterintuitive, but I want to make a note of that. Second, you mentioned about like making mistakes. Like people fear making mistakes. And I run into this all the time. I was talking with a guy about it earlier today. That something that he's learned is that he will always be making mistakes. And so you can't be fearful about making mistakes. You have to go forward. You have to make mistakes. We're in a business where you make mistakes. It's just the price of admission. We solve problems all the time. If you buy an apartment building, you're going to do a bunch of due diligence on it. And every single thing that could go wrong will, while you have it under contract or while you have it in ownership, those 5, 7 years, whatever it is. If it can go wrong, it will. Plus other things that you don't even see coming. We solve problems for a living. So you have to be okay making mistakes. And that's fine. We are imperfect people. We make mistakes all the time. So figure out some sort of policy within your company on what you do when you make a mistake. Normalize it. Talk about a mistake you made during a meeting. Write about it at night. It's something I do, and I encourage all my clients to do at night, is normalize mistakes. I keep a little notebook at my bedstand, and I write 3 things every night. It just takes me a minute. I write one thing I'm grateful for the day. I write something that I did that I fell on my face or made a huge mistake or a big failure. So I write that. That's in the middle. And then last, I just write something that made me laugh that day. What was something that was funny? And so I'm trying to normalize mistakes because that's what we have to do moving forward. We have to make mistakes. If you run into a investment that's perfect, run away because they're not telling you about potential mistakes. And last, I want to talk about moving forward and putting pressure on yourself to move forward and always getting the job done. Yes, there are times when you have to put your head down and just get the job done, for sure. But there's this difference between psychological drift and psychological shift. First, I'll talk about shift. Psychological shift is saying, I have thought about this thing and I'm intentionally shifting what we do. So we're going to do multifamily. You know what? The numbers aren't there, or bridge debt. We can't get the debt we want or whatever. So we're going to move to self-storage. That's a shift that you're making on purpose. Drift is when you just fudge something one time, not thinking about it, and then that becomes the new normal. I'm just going to put in another hour, and that becomes the new normal. Once I get this done, no problem. But then I put in another hour. Next thing you know, I'm working 80 hours a week, sacrificing a lot of things that are probably my why, because most of our whys really are whos. And so I encourage people to have just non-negotiables, 3 things that you do every day that make you feel like you. And this isn't a to-do list. This is a to-be list. Things that make you feel like you. So for me, what I do every morning, I sit for 3 minutes in that yellow chair and try not to think. And that's like the hardest thing ever. This morning, I looked at the clock, like it must be 3 minutes, and it was 37 seconds. And I was like, oh, come on, baby. You would not believe how long 3 minutes is. But just being able to sit by yourself trains you to pause and think. The other thing I do is I keep a gratitude journal in the morning. So I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. And when you've kept one for as long as I have, it starts to get ridiculous because there's just so many things in this world that you can label. And then last, I always write an email to my daughter every day. She's 8 now. So she has a few thousand emails to read when I decide to turn that email account over to her. I just write things that we do or things I'm proud of her about.
That's amazing. I love that last. I mean, I love a lot of what you said, but I can tell you I'm going to steal the email thing because I think that's a very. I've thought a lot about that. I sometimes think about the podcast as archives, like something like
Yeah.
if I'm gone, the kids can be like, they can pull up the podcast and be like, look, there's Dad talking again. Like we don't know what he's talking about, but there he is blabbing away. I just think the email is a very cool idea.
Yeah, I want to say one thing about that. Because I Steve Jobs wrote a book about himself late in life. And everyone glorifies Steve Jobs. I don't know. I think we learn a lot about how to not live life from Steve
Mhm.
Jobs. He
Yeah,
wrote that book so that his daughter would know who he is. If I
yeah,
write about a book so that my daughter knows who I am, that's a complete failure of a life to me. And
yeah.
so I write her an email every single day so we know what is happening in real time. And what I did was I just created a Gmail account for her.
Mhm.
No one else knows what it is.
Yeah,
But then I just write about things we did, funny things that she said, things she wants to do, failings as a father, ways that I could have done better, things that I was proud of, sacrifices I made that I can't get back. I put that all in there so she can read it one day because I'm not going to write a book when I'm dying so that she knows who I am.
yeah,
I just
yeah.
have a bone to pick about that.
No, I think if you asked Steve Jobs' daughter, she might not have the same outlook on him as a lot of people do. And again, it's like you separate. I guess you have to decide what you want to. You have to decide what you want out of life, and what he
Yeah.
wanted was to build Apple and create an amazing company, and he did that. But he was at the sacrifice of his family, and that's something that I've often struggled with is like my why is my family. I'm I'm doing this stuff for them, but I also don't want to just miss out on the now with them. And so I think like a lot of this, like I said, really resonates with me. I wanted to go back to sort of the first of the 3 things that you touched on there, and
Hmm.
the kind of the idea of getting to a certain point, right? And you said a lot of your clients, for a lot of them, it's closing that first deal. That was the most anticlimactic thing I've ever done. Like closing the first deal, the most anticlimactic thing I've ever done, because you you go through all of this, you close it, and it's like, great, congratulations, you close. Well, you're not done. That's actually when you have to start. That's when you have to get to work. That's when it
Right.
starts. Like that's the real work
Right.
happens then, and it's just so it's like it's a great accomplishment, and not to minimize that for people. But that is just the beginning. It's not like I can. I feel sure that a full cycle exit is maybe a bigger milestone, or maybe has a bigger feeling than
Hmm.
closing that first deal, because closing that first deal is literally that is the start. So I just thought that was an interesting point, and I excuse me, sorry, I can imagine that it's something that you come across frequently with your clients.
Yeah, I do. And talking more about just closing that first deal and making it be a big deal. Make it a big deal. It's a huge deal. How many people close uh, a syndication event in their lives? I mean, we're talking a small, minuscule percentage of a small, minuscule percentage of 1%,
Right.
ever get to say that. So that's pretty special. Do what you got to do. Pop a bottle, rent a convertible.
Yeah.
I did that on Turo. You can rent a convertible for like $80. It's pretty sweet. But like do
Right.
something that's really special that like you wouldn't normally do. One of the cool things about getting a gift from someone is if it's done right, it's something you'd never get for yourself. So do something you would never allow yourself to do because you just did something that you never thought you were going to do. And probably most of the people in your life thought you would never do. Or if you're like my family, thought maybe is illegal, And so like go
Yeah.
ahead and celebrate that. Don't just be like, "Oh, it's another day, ho hum."
Yeah.
Celebrate that, but know that it's not the end. And here's the misnomer that I think most of society, especially American society, is running into is everyone wants to retire. Awesome. Cool. Magic wand, you're retired. Now what?
Yeah.
You know? Like I work with people who are retired. I've got a client. He's got $350 million in the bank. He owns buildings all over the place. He he calls me up. He says, I'm lost, man. I don't know what to do. I have no idea what to
Yeah.
do. Because he doesn't need to work. That's one of the blessings of a W-2 job is you're in a routine. You got to do it. You have a
Mhm.
common enemy. He doesn't have a common enemy. He doesn't have a boss that's telling him what to do, you know? So he's got to figure it out. So he spent a week by himself in his apartment, only walking his dog. And he came back to me and said, "You know what I'm going to do? I know a bunch of people and I have a bunch of connections. I'm just going to mentor people. I don't need the money. I love the hunt," is what he was saying. Like he loves the
Mhm.
hunt of the deal, but also he loves collaborating and like seeing other people do it. So he is kind of like a free advisor for people he likes. Cool. He also
Yeah.
travels a ton, like,
Right.
but he had to figure out his purpose in life. And I feel like we always try to get to this end goal, but I know people who have gotten to that end goal and you have to stare into that abyss and you have to answer some questions that you maybe aren't prepared to ask.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of talk about, early retirement, and I think that on one hand, I think um, it's a great structure, great, I don't know, purpose to build towards, because I think we do need to look at ways to create the optionality of retirement. But I think most of the people that are driven enough to do that stuff don't actually want to never work again. And so I think
Hmm.
retirement needs to maybe be redefined or renamed or something to optionality. Work is something I do because I love it, not because I have to, that kind of thing. And I think it's an interesting, the idea of retirement for me is like almost like, well, if I got to the point of retirement, it's like, okay, that just means I'm going to do a different job, or a different, not necessarily job, but I'm going to, like you said, with this guy, like you're going to find something else that fulfills you, because I think when you stop learning and growing and having, something to um, focus on, that gets really, I mean, boring is the least of it. It just gets, you start to lose your sense of, not sense of worth, but like that, I can't think of the right word, but just a sense of growth. Like you're just not
Hmm.
having anything that like looks like another achievement in some way. And it's I think those are things that people thrive on.
Absolutely. I think we can say, make up an equation here. Like life equals curiosity. It seems like when people retire in a traditional like W-2 or pension model,
Mhm.
they lose their curiosity. And it's like just downhill from there. Like I was meeting with a client a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about how he had moved out of his W-2 job. And the same thing happens when you leave your W-2 job. The first week is awesome. And then the second week
Right.
you call me up and you're like, I need a boss. You know,
Yeah.
we need, everyone leaves their W-2 to get away from a boss, but then you realize, oh crap, I actually need structure. Otherwise I'm just eating chicken wings all day long, you know, like,
Right.
and
Right.
watching Jeopardy, which is awesome, by the way. I love Jeopardy. So we went through an exercise and I asked him, okay, let's say, you didn't have you had your W-2 job. Now you don't. Awesome. And now you're raising capital for a syndication deal. If you weren't doing that, what would you do? He's like, I'd probably just like do a fund of funds. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's say you don't do a fund of funds. What would you do? And he's like, oh, I would probably just like consult. And I'm like, great. Let's say you're not consulting. You know, I'm retiring him from all these jobs. Let's say you're not
Yeah.
consulting. What would you do? Well, there's a bunch of house projects I'd want to do. Okay, cool. Those house projects are done. What are you doing now? I've always wanted to garden. Okay, great. So, I mean, there's just always something new
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we think of work as work. I don't want to get up and go to work and punch a
Yeah.
clock, but work is curiosity in motion. It's curiosity in action. So you got to
Mhm.
figure that out. I mean, we both had a good chuckle when he said I'd garden, but we could have kept going and it would have been like volunteer at the library, coach my kids'
Yeah.
soccer team. I mean, there's just always something there to keep your curiosity going. So why fight it? Just be curious.
Yeah. No, I think, and it's, I guess it goes back to what you talked about before is, you know, especially with the Steve Jobs example, but it's just like that. There's a lot of things that we think about, and I do this all the time, but it's like, I'd like to learn this. I'd like to do this, blah, blah, and I don't have the time or whatever because I'm because of work and whatnot. But someday, someday when work is not so much, I'll do that thing. And I think, I'm getting the sense that maybe your thought is put those some days in now, and kind of get those experiences along the way as well. Is that how you would, maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is that how you would frame it as well, or what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as an entrepreneur, I've found in my life that I work best when I sprint and then I'm off. So I'm on 100% and then I'm off 0%. If I'm on 90% and then I'm 60% off, that burns that candle pretty quickly. And so I need to rejuvenate. And so I've switched my personal calendar to a quarters system where there's 13 weeks in each quarter, obviously. And what I do is I sprint for 12 weeks and then I take a week off. And that week off is totally off.
Mhm.
And I do odd jobs. And then throughout each day, I've got my non negotiables. But then also, I need to schedule time for me to hang out with friends. I'm an extroverted guy, so I get energy around people. I don't get energy sitting in my office all day. I'm super excited to be on this podcast talking to you because this gives me energy, you know, and so I've got to do things that represent my energy and fill me up every single day. And what I've got to do moving forward, and what I recommend other people, is to schedule times in their day where they can be themselves and fill themselves up. You can't sprint for 12 weeks straight. When I mean sprint for 12 weeks straight, I'm not saying like I work 168 hours a week, obviously. But I take time off because throughout the day, what research says is you get more done and you're more creative when you're off the clock. You know,
Mhm.
the best way to kill your creativity is sit in front of your computer, you know? And so a lot of people are moving towards more analog type of stuff, or are wakening up to, you know, going on walks, you know, with like a phone with a voice app. That's what I do. I write down all my ideas on it. My operations guy has me do something where I literally voice it, and then it rings up into my our CRM that we're working on under the ideas tab and puts it on an agenda for our meeting for the next time. It's pretty wild stuff, like stuff that I have no comprehension. He's like, oh, it's easy. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
cool. And so you've got to get ideas. You got to get them out there. Psychology of Money. Love that book. And one of my favorite things to quote from that book is the number 48, because at hour 48 of working, you start to go down afterwards. So you can get productivity up to 48, but if you work 50 hours, each hour only counts 90%. So it's like you're working 45. You want to work 60 hours? Cool. Each hour counts, what is it, like 75%. So you're still back at 45. So you might as well just hang it up at 45 and then get all sorts of cool ideas off the clock. And when you can create that boundary of I'm on and I'm off, you're going to see your capital raising go through the roof because you're going to make connections. People in our line of work with people who know, like, and trust. If you can be yourself better, if you can show up as yourself, fully embracing your flaws and your ups and your downs, people are going to want to invest in you.
How do you suggest people? This is something I have challenges with, and I assume other people too. But how do you suggest people be off? Like, I don't know if this question is making sense, but like, if you're on that, you say, okay, I'm going to do the 45 hours or the 48 hours. What I'm going to do those hours, and then I'm off. But how do you shut it off? Because I definitely struggle with that. Like, how do I say? And it's like I have those thoughts in my head. I'm like, this is this is family time. This is when I spend time with my kids, and I can take the actions that suggest that I'm off, but it's very hard to sometimes make my mind switch from work mode to sort of family mode or whatever it is. That really the one place that it works for me is in exercise. I can I can exercise, and that will, for the most part, I can turn off my mind there. But it's hard in other scenarios.
Absolutely. And that's why you see you can always know when you go to a syndication conference who the most successful syndicators are, because they're like the buff dudes, right? Because they do the higher the stakes, like the higher the weights you got to lift. That's really how it is. So you found the cheat code right there.
Yeah.
There's some things you can do internally, and there's some things you can do externally to help yourself turn off. Everyone likes to use that analogy of race cars. You're on a race cars on a race, they go 200 miles an hour, but they got to take pit stops. Yeah, but when they're in the pits for 20 seconds, the driver is just waiting to get back on the racetrack the whole time. So it's not exactly time off. The dude's like, come on, when they drop the thing down, his wheels are already squealing, Yeah. And so we need to have some actual time off. And I think what most people use here externally is what I mean is like things that you do in your environment to let you know that you're off. What most people do is crack a beer or pour some wine. But if you want something healthier than that, and I think we all do, that's just the next phase, you've got to figure out a little routine to shut down. Some people will check emails. Some people will write an email to themselves of the to-do list for the next day. Some people will get out a little Post-it note and write down the things to do the next time they sit at the desk. Things like that. Turning off your lamps, having a ritual, taking a couple deep breaths, 1-minute meditation, things like that. All of that stuff works to tell your brain, okay, I'm about to be off. And here's the important part, do this every day. Change happens at a subconscious level. And your subconscious tells narratives to your conscious about what you are by what you do every day. So you can do visualizations of yourself shutting down at the end of the day, and your subconscious will be like, oh, okay, I've seen that before. Visualization is about 96, 97% of the real thing. So it's pretty remarkable. You can do visualizations and your subconscious will be like, yep, that's who we are. We shut down at the end of the day. What I do is I do like a couple deep breaths, and I turn off my lamps, and I just go through like the things that I did during the day for 30 seconds, and then I'm out. Externally, there's some things you can do in your environment to let you know that you're off. I'll share what I do, and hopefully people can glean from that. What I do is I turn off my computer. My door, we're in my office right now. My door is right there. And what I do is I grab myself a Post-it note. also made in Minnesota. And I closed the door. Okay, I closed the door. The office is closed. You know, like those you want to go to a restaurant or coffee shop at night, it's closed. It says closed.
Yeah.
But what I found is then I have all these great ideas. So what I want to do is I want to come in here and start working on them. So what I do is I put a post-it note on the outside door so I can write my great ideas on it for the next day. And then I go and I put my phone upstairs so that it's plugged in and I can't access it. And then I'm good to go for the day.
Good.
Yeah.
I like it.
So that's what I do. And what it does is it just helps me like say to myself, I'm done. I'm done for the day. You know?
Yeah.
And then if I have a problem being done with the day and I keep breaking those boundaries, then that's on me and it's a different problem.
Yeah. Yeah. It's we laughed about it, but I have never seen a fuller hotel gym than I have at real estate conferences. It's like it's like really a true thing. Like it's just you go in there in the morning of a conference and it's like Anytime Fitness in January 1st. It's like crazy how many people will be in the hotel gym at a real estate conference.
Yeah, exactly. How do you raise capital? You're either up late at night at the bar or you're up early raising bars.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, exactly. The stars method, Chris. You want
Mhm.
to talk a little bit about that and kind of tell people about, you've developed this method, tell people about it, and you don't have to give away every secret, but maybe a little high level.
Yeah, I'm happy to give away all my secrets. I'm in the helping business, Jason.
Perfect.
So the stars method is a culmination of the past 19 years of my work. And it's a collection of 11 different psychological theories. And it's the first 3 months that I take all my clients through. It is a mental system that will find all of your beliefs and you will pick and choose which ones you want to keep and which ones you want to let go of. And you will know your why. You will be crystal clear and focused on that. And you will know your priorities and you will know your noise and you'll get rid of the noise. You will be changed. So I named my company Infinite Skies because of a constellation, actually, Orion. And Orion has stars on both sides. One of the stars is the third brightest star in the Earth, or that you can see from Earth in the sky, and it's burning out. It's burning out. And on the other side is another star, and it's going to live to be 9 trillion years old or whatever. Same sky, same constellation. In fact, the one is already burnt out. We just can't tell because we can't see it because it takes so long for light to get here. So it's burned out and it's about to like combust, and the other one isn't. And so I created this stars method so that because I noticed that people were really grinding it out, because we're doers.
Yeah.
How do you do an apartment building? You do it. You figure it out and you do it. There's so much grit and determination, but there's also so much spite. Like, I'm going to do it because other people say I can't. Or I'm going to do it because people always picked on me. Or I'm going to do it to show that I'm right and you're wrong. Or I'm better than you. And so I created this stars method so that you can figure out through this journey we go on. It takes 3 months, it takes 90 days. And you'll figure out your limiting beliefs. You'll figure out your resistance. You'll figure out who you are and who you aren't. And when you're done, it's pretty awesome. So I don't have any data on it in 2024. We're still in Q1 for us. But in 2023, after these 3 months, my clients raise their income 35% after this. They're raising 2.5x after going through this. I can't tell you why exactly, other than people just are authentic. I was just meeting with a client and he said, you made me realize that I'm that guy. I've got the confidence. And what else do you say? I didn't realize my potential. Now I see it. And so it's just all about asking different questions. You know what I mean? And so that's the A in it. The stars as an acronym. S is study your unique psychology. T is tear away limiting beliefs. A is ask yourself different questions. R is reiterate your reality. And the S is the skies become infinite. You can do whatever you want if you're not afraid of making mistakes. If you love yourself 100% no matter what you do, go out and make mistakes. You're still awesome.
Yeah, it's a very powerful message, and very it's a great endorsement too from that client. Just kind of being able to, open that up within themselves, I think is obviously, that's the key. It's extremely important. Um, you, you touched on the why, and there's 4 questions I like to ask every guest. The first one is, of course, the name of the show is Know Your Why. So, Chris, what is your why? What drives you? What keeps you going and gets you excited about moving forward?
I knew you were going to ask me this, but I've got to be honest. I don't know. So 8 years ago, I was diagnosed with chronic kidney disease. And the doctor told me that I had 10 years until I was in dialysis and probably 15 years until I was in the ground. And I had a 2-month-old at that time. And that wasn't going to work for my timeline. And so I was given a brochure on kidney disease. And I can still remember like myself floating above. I could feel myself like floating above, like looking down. And I was just thinking like, nah, this isn't going to be it. And so I had to eat a very low sodium diet. I had to be on steroids for a couple of years. I had to drink a gallon of water. So don't take me on a road trip, Jason. I've got to pee like every 12 minutes.
Yeah.
It's terrible. But I changed everything. I started making condiments. I started making all my own food. I didn't exercise because I didn't need protein. My body couldn't handle protein. And after 7 years of that, the doc said last year I'm in remission. And so 93% of people die of this diagnosis. I'm one of 7% that don't. And that was my why. And I've got to be honest, when I'm not like about to die, like I feel like I've lost a bit of my mojo. And so I don't have a great answer to that. And I should, right? But I don't. And so I'm going through that process myself of kind of figuring out what's next, because I believe that that happened for a reason. And it really helped me open up my entrepreneurial spirit. Before I was always kind of afraid of like making, not necessarily making mistakes, but like going bankrupt, or like a big failure.
Right.
I was afraid that like it would change me somehow or something like that. And then, when you're battling a chronic illness, you just really don't care anymore. And that's a cool gift. It's a cool gift. I'm glad to have returned that gift to the store.
Yeah.
But I really need to figure that out for myself. I know from talking to other people that your why is generally a who. So
Mm-hmm.
I've got to get that dialed in.
Yeah. Well, you've got a daughter, so I'm sure. And you said in your form, you're her role model and biggest fan, and I think that really resonates with me. Just I look at my kids as, yes, I'm supposed to teach them, I'm supposed to be their role model, but I also feel like I learn maybe more from them than they learn from me.
Mm-hmm.
Just sort of being able to see the world from the eyes of a child, and that kind of just be a little bit more open to believing in things that maybe you might dismiss. I also think it helps me be less self-conscious, I guess. The kids are just no, let's dance down the sidewalk, let's skip down the sidewalk, and my first instinct is to be embarrassed and like have a sort of twinge of that, and then I'm like, but I'm not saying no to them. They want to
Hmm.
dance down the sidewalk with me, then we're dancing down the
Mm.
sidewalk. Let's go. So I
Yeah,
think
that's awesome.
it's pretty cool, message to send, and uh, that's fantastic that you are in remission. That's great news. And I would say, I mean, you did the work too. Like I think sometimes people get a diagnosis like that, a chronic of a chronic disease, and they just don't don't do the work to try
Hmm.
and you know try and maybe you can't fight it forever. Who knows? Like sometimes you can, sometimes, but like if you just don't try, you definitely won't. So I think it's just really a powerful message, sent with that story. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Can I tell you a little kidney disease story?
Of course. Yeah.
So, if you ever want like fast food, go to a lobby or waiting room of a nephrologist, a kidney doctor. Everyone's just like pounding Arby's. And I'm like, dude, just eat it in the car. Just eat it in the
Right.
car or something. But
Right.
anyway, so I had to eat 1,500 milligrams of sodium a day. And I'm a math junkie. So I know that that's 10,500 a week. So I was talking to my kidney doctor. I asked her, hey, the Super Bowl's coming up. I want to have some chicken wings and eat some chili con queso dip with my dad.
Yeah.
Is there any way that I could like build up my tokens, like my allowance, and
Yeah.
like eat
Yeah.
500 milligrams a day for like 10 days and then like spend 6,000 here on
Right.
one day? And she said, I don't know. To be honest, like no one really listens to me. That's what she said. And so
Yeah.
she's
I
like, you
believe
tell
it.
me. So I was like, all right, all right. So I did the experiment, and here's what happened. I had a chicken wing, and then I was like, I could feel the salt on my lips, and I was like so thirsty. And then I went to the chili con queso dip, and my dad's like, oh, this is good dip, huh? This is good dip. And I was passed out because like my body just shut down. It wasn't used to that kind of food.
Wow.
And so I just like fell asleep, and I had to like take a break from like all the bad food.
Yeah. Take a nap between each chicken wing so your body can process the
So
sodium
worth
of
it.
it.
So worth it.
Oh man, that's crazy. Yeah, one of my best friends from high school, he had Hodgkin's lymphoma when he's going to hear this and be
Mm,
like, why'd you tell people? But he had Hodgkin's lymphoma when we were young. I don't remember exactly, like early 20s. And scary, I'm sure, to him, scary to all of his friends, because it was something that you just don't expect to deal with in a young person like that. He did great, recovered all of that, but he has had secondary pancreatic damage due to the chemo and radiation. So now he's
mm,
diabetic, and you, I'm I'm thankful because he's a good friend of mine and proud of him for doing what he needs to do to like be okay, right? Because you hear about people that get they find out they're diabetic and they don't make any of the changes. They don't
yeah.
change their diet. They don't exercise. They don't do all the other stuff like, and he's done all of it, and it's I've never told him this, but I'm Dwayne. I'm very proud of you. So thank you for sticking around. But it's something that like is cool to see people that take something like that and do with do the right thing with it. You know what I mean? Do something positive. Take care of themselves, um, and use the opportunities that are available to us. So I think uh, it's it's a very inspiring story. Thank you for sharing it, and like I said, it definitely relatable. From my friends, seeing him do the same thing, doing what he needs to do to continue to take care of himself, and um, it's awesome. Because
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, I don't think any one of us would fault Dwayne for like running away or
right,
not going to the doctor.
yeah,
And I come from a long line of dudes who do not go to the doctor, right? Because you don't want to get
right,
bad news.
right,
And I was one of them. I didn't want to get bad news. I didn't want to face facts. But at some point you're like, well, what the hell else am I going to do?
yeah,
I'm not ready to throw in the cards.
yeah,
So I guess we'll just go forward. So yeah, hats off to you, Dwayne. Way to go, man. Look at you
yeah, yeah.
inspiring Jason. That's
Goes
awesome.
goes goes from well, he runs marathons now, so he's a we used to run a lot together, and he would be I would be waiting for him, and now I can't. Now I can't hold a candle to it. So
Whoa,
he's a great runner.
that's
It's pretty
awesome. I'm
cool.
amazed by
Yeah.
people who run marathons by choice. Like I've got
Right.
a
He seems to
Prius.
like it. I did it because I was like, yeah, this is something you do when you get older because there's not you start to run out of other ways to compete. But he seems to actually like it. I'm like, good for you. But yeah, again, it's very cool to see that response to sort of something negative like that. Um, Chris, when people hear this and they want to reach out to you, what's the best way?
Oh, they can hit me up on LinkedIn. So, I'm at Chris Schwagerl. Last name is Schwagerl. You can find me at infiniteskies.life. That's my website with a little bit of what I do. I'm happy to answer any questions or consult, help out in any way I possibly can, because we're all in this together, and I really do believe that if I do my job well, you'll naturally do your job better, and
Mm,
want to do it more,
yeah,
and want to live your life more, and have better health and wealth and relationships. So I think we're all partners on this.
amazing. Final question for you is, what advice would you give to someone who wants to start out? And a lot of times I say, get started in real estate or something like that. I'd actually, for you, maybe speak to people that are maybe already in real estate. They've already started as syndicators, and they're feeling that struggle. They're having some issues with their performance, and they don't know. So how would you aside from coming to you and becoming one of your clients, what would you maybe give them as a starting point?
Yeah, I would say that if you are feeling like you're not welcome or not worthy or having imposter syndrome, awesome. Pop a bottle of champagne, because hey, you're in good company. The only way to
Yeah,
not have that is to just like stay at home and watch Jeopardy all day, which is also an awesome reality again, or go to
yeah,
Costco where they have free samples. That's pretty
yeah,
good, but you won't have imposter syndrome, but you won't get anything done.
yeah.
So to the people who are thinking that they don't have what it takes, or just getting started and are like, oh man, I thought this was going to be easier, hang in there. And if I could give you any sort of guidance, it would be that I'm guessing that you are thinking you're not worthy because you're thinking of who you are when you're like 12 or 13 years old. Like for me right now, I'm like, I can't believe I'm on a podcast with Jason because I'm some like dumb skateboard kid. Like, why would anyone listen to me? That narrative runs through my brain because
Right.
that's who I was at one point. And I need to embrace who that kid is and be like, yep, that kid had to have beliefs to fit in, to like be a chameleon, to learn how to use words to persuade or make people laugh or whatever, because I was uncomfortable.
Mhm.
That's not me now. So you can you can do an activity and go back to when you were in middle school, let's say, and think about your life and what you were dealing with and the belief system you needed to have to get over it at that point, and just let that go. Just embrace it, that that's who you are. You needed that at one point, let it go. And then do visualizations right now about the person that you are. You can even ask other people, hey, send an email to 5 people. Hey, describe me in 5 words. What if I were to ask that right now? If I were to send that email out to 5 people right now who I admire, even people who are like leaders of masterminds, people who I would love to work with, none of them are going to say dumb skateboard kid, because that's not who they see. But I've been living with myself for so long that that person who used to be that still lives in me. And so I would say go back to that time, forgive yourself for all the things that you had to do to get by, and then look at who you are now and visualize yourself making it happen, and visualize it from different perspectives, from your perspective, from your partner's perspective, from the seller's perspective, an investor's perspective. Think about it in multiple ways, because then it'll feel real. You can visualize yourself to the future. and own that. Own who you are, and then you'll be able to move forward.
I love it. I think that's, yeah, we're all battling the little kid inside sometimes, I think. But yeah, no, that's phenomenal advice. Well, Chris, thank you so much. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. I appreciate everything you shared with us. I think people get a ton of value out of this. So thank you so much for coming.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Jason. It was awesome.
Yeah. And folks listening, I know you're going to love this episode. Make sure we'll put Chris's information in the show notes. Please like, rate, and review the show so we can get more great guests like Chris. And thank you all for listening.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?